7th chapter, Mishnah Aleph. Actually, until now, we actually talked about going out on Shabbat, but we didn't talk about any works that we do on Shabbat. Actually, it starts all the works, all the things that are not allowed to do on Shabbat, we're starting now, on the 7th chapter. From chapter 1 until here, was all about carrying, you noticed? It was pretty much that's what we discussed. Carrying. We did discuss oil before Shabbat, what you're allowed to, you remember, what you're allowed to light with, what you're not allowed to light with, and you're not allowed before Shabbat. So we discussed things that even has to do with before Shabbat. Like, for example, a vessel not to put under something else if it drips into it, because it takes it out. But those things that you start before Shabbat. The things on Shabbat are starting now. Okay? So פרק שביעי משנה א'. כבר הזכרנו בפתיחה למסכתנו. We already mentioned in the opening of our Mishnah, our מסכת, our tractate, שהעושה בשבת מלאכה האסורה מן התורה. If somebody on Shabbat does something which is forbidden from the Torah, he's not allowed to do it according to the Torah. במזיד, if he does it on purpose, what's the punishment? חייב מיתה, very good, death penalty. Only אם יתרו בו, obviously you need to give him a warning. אם יתרו בו חייב סקילה, if they give him a warning, he's obligated stoning. ואם לא יתרו בו, what happens if there was nobody warned him, there was no witnesses? Then what? Then karet. ובשוגג, and what happens if he did it by mistake? Very good. ובשוגג חייב קורבן חטאת. You need to bring a sacrifice, a sin offering. כן הזכרנו, we also mentioned שיש אבות מלאכות. We discussed that they are fathers of מלאכה, if you remember. That's right. ויש תולדות, and then there are offsprings of the מלאכה. ודין התולדות כדין האבות. We also mentioned that it's the same ruling. If you did an av מלאכה, the father, or you did an offspring. It's the same ruling exactly. כפי שיבואר, like we're going to explain. משנתנו בא ללמד, המשנה comes to teach, כלל בעניין העובר בשוגג על איסור מלאכה בשבת. If somebody mistakenly did something on Shabbat, we're going to learn the rules now. What happens if by mistake if you did something on Shabbat? שכן שלושה סוגי שוגג הם, כמבואר במשנה. There are 3 types of made a mistake. And it's important to know which mistake you did, because the sacrifice is going to be different for each mistake. 3 types of mistakes, and it's important to know which ones. So let's start. כלל גדול אמרו בשבת. A very big important rule they said when it came to Shabbat. בגמרא מבואר, in the Gemara, by the way, it usually should say כלל אמרו בשבת. They made the rule in Shabbat. Why they say גדול? Why it say big? So the Gemara explains שמשום חומרת השבת נקטה משן לשון כלל גדול, because Shabbat is so severe. What do you mean so severe? There's a death penalty, and there's a kares for it. Usually for most commandments, it's not death penalty. It's not kares. Yeah? Because it's such a severe ruling for it, they say it's a big rule. You have to remember it. So what's the rule? כל השוכח עיקר שבת. Anybody who forgets that what Shabbat is all about. So the person who forgot what Shabbat is all about says, what does it mean, a person who forgot what Shabbat is all about? How is it even possible? What does it mean? Let's see. שסבורו שאין בכלל מצוות שבת בתורה. He grew up, let's say, somewhere. He learned about Shabbat. Then they moved him out. They moved from Israel to America. And they became big members in Reform Shul. And over there, everybody was doing everything on Shabbat. And he grew up, and then he thought that what? It's not a problem to drive on Shabbat. It's not a problem to do things on Shabbat. He didn't know it was a problem. Right? Like in the Reform Shul. He moved from Israel to America. And his parents went to Reform Shul. Right? This is what it means, forgot that Shabbat is Shabbat. So how can he forget? He did. He knew when it's a Saturday. He just didn't realize that you're not allowed to do all these things on Saturday. בגמרא אמרה, in the Gemara this says, כגון ששכח שנצטוו ישראל על השבת. he forgot that the Jews were commanded on the mitzvah of Shabbat. Or, Tinok shenishba leben hagoyim, or a small child that was captured by the other nations. Or the example I gave, somebody was born in Israel, he knew what Shabbat was, he grew in a religious family, let's say, and then they moved to America and they became Reform. He grew up then, he thinks that Shabbat is permitted, all these things. Or goy shenitgayer ben hagoyim, or sometimes you have a non-Jew that decided to convert and he remained amongst the goyim. He didn't realize he wants to be a Jew, but he didn't realize this is not allowed. Okay? So what happens then? He forgot that there is such a thing as Shabbat. ועשה מלאכות הרבה בשבתות הרבה. So this is what he did. Now he doesn't know that you're not allowed to do all these kinds of jobs on Shabbat, all the 39 melachas on Shabbat, and he does it all the time, constantly. On many Shabbatot he does it. For 2 years. And then all of a sudden someone comes over, and he tells Shalom Aleichem, he meets him in the street, they start talking. He says, you know you're not allowed to do all these things on Shabbat. He says, I didn't know. If I would have known, I would never done it. I didn't know. He says, I'm sorry that I grew up this way. I didn't know. So what should you do? כלומר, אפילו בשבתות הרבה, even if it went for 2 years, ולאחר זמן נודע לו עניין מצוות השבת. And after a while, it was known to him about the mitzvah of Shabbat. Now the problem comes. How many sin offerings does he need to bring? One, or every time he did something, he has to bring? What do you mean אותו דבר הכל? You say it's only one sin. For the 2 years, for every Shabbat, for 2 years, he only brings one sacrifice. Yeah, but so every time he was not okay, he should bring one for that. It doesn't matter what he feels. Shogeg means that in all the cases it's going to be that you didn't know. Shogeg means you didn't know in all the cases. We're going to see what the other cases are soon. But you're right. Over here, he only brings one, even though it's 2 years, and even though it's hundreds of times, and different ones. אינו חייב אלא חטאת אחת. He only brings one sin offering. קורבן חטאת אחת על כל השבתות שחילל. He brings one sin offering in all the Shabbos that he went against. לפי שלא הייתה כאן אלא שגגה אחת. There was only one mistake. Once you fix this mistake, everything is fixed. Only one mistake. He didn't know. Now he knows. He fixed everything. שהביאו אותו לכל מה שעשה, והיא העלם מצוות השבת. In other words, in order to fix it, how many things you need to fix?
Just
one. So you only need to bring one sin offering. היודע עיקר שבת. Now let's look at another example. Somebody who knows what Shabbat is all about. Religious person, like today, me and you. We know what Shabbat is all about. שיש מצוות שבת בתורה, ואסור לעשות במלאכה. So we know that there's Shabbat, and you're not allowed to work on Shabbat. We know that, right? This is us. ועשה מלאכות הרבה, בשבתות הרבה. And he did many מלאכות on many Shabbatot. How does it mean? What does it mean? He didn't think you're allowed to do it on Shabbat. He didn't realize it was Shabbat. He thought it was a Tuesday. So let's take an example. Take an example. He's going in a caravan. Right? And he got drunk one night and he thought it was the other day. They're going for 6 months. And it's just him and the Goyim. Just him and the other nation. And everybody make a mistake. They switch the days. Some words. So he thinks, he knows when Shabbat is. And on Shabbat he doesn't do any work. But it was not a Shabbat. He missed it one day. Can happen. Right? So he did the mistake. חייב על כל שבת ושבת. He is obligated on every Shabbat. On every Shabbat he needs obligation. So now, how many sacrifices does this guy need to bring? That's right. The first guy only brings one. This guy, it depends. If it was for a year that he was going in a caravan, he didn't know what the thing was, or he lived among people who make the dates different, whatever the reason is, he went on a desert island. Not only on every Shabbat, because he knows that you're not allowed to work on Shabbat. So on every Shabbat that he made the mistake, he needs to bring a sacrifice. So it took a year, it was 52 weeks, he needs to bring 52 sacrifices of every Shabbat. Chatat achat, on every Shabbat, one sin offering. שהמלאכות שעשה בכל שבת ושבת, שגגה אחת הן, that all the works he did on every Shabbat, they are one mistake. מפני ששכח ששבת היום, because he forgot that today was Shabbat. ואף על פי שלא נזכר על כך אף במשך השבוע, and even though he didn't remember it in that week, מכל מקום הימים שבין שבת לשבת מחלקות את השבתות שכל אחד נחשבת כשגה בפני עצמה. He says, but I don't understand, it's exactly like the previous case. What makes the difference between this case and the previous case? The previous case, he broke Shabbat for a year because he thought it was allowed to. He didn't realize not Shabbat. You're not allowed to work on Shabbat in the previous case, right? He didn't know that. And we say you only bring one sin offering. And over here, he also didn't know that it was Shabbat, but he needs to bring 52. Why? And the other one? A little bit more. So it says, the other one, he just forgot that there is a Shabbat. He didn't even know the Shabbat exists. I mean, he knew there's a day Shabbat, but he didn't know all the things are not allowed to do on Shabbat. Over here, he knows he's not allowed to work on Shabbat. And then there's a weekdays separating between them. In the Metzias, in the reality, there's Shabbat, which is holy, and then there's the weekdays that are separating each Shabbat from the other Shabbat. In the other ones, there's nothing that separates. Because in his mind, he's allowed to do work on Shabbat. Over here, the weekdays separate between Shabbat and Shabbat. In other words, he knew it was Shabbat. It's almost like you said. You have a responsibility to find out if it's really Shabbat or not. The day you think it is on Shabbat or not. You have a week to find out if this is Shabbat. I know you made a mistake. Yeah? But there's a weekly separation between them. Over there, there's no weekly separation. Because you're not allowed. You, in your mind, I'm allowed to do every time. Over here, you know every Shabbat that comes in, you're not allowed to do. So over here, the fact that you know that every Shabbat you're not allowed to, that makes it to bring a sin offering on that Shabbat. הוא מבאר רש"י לפי שאי אפשר שלא יוודע לו בינתיים שאותו היום השבת היה, אלא שלא נזכר שעשה בו מלאכה. Rashi have a different explanation. He didn't remember that he did the job on Shabbat. That's what it says. He only remembered after many weeks. Okay. We leave Rashi alone. What happens? Different case. See, we had two cases so far. You forgot that it's Shabbat. You forgot that you're not allowed to do. You knew that when Shabbat is during the week. You just didn't know that you're not allowed to work on Shabbat. Second case is you knew you're not allowed to work on Shabbat, but you didn't know that it was Shabbat. Now the third case. היודע שהוא שבת, you know today is Shabbat, ועשה מלאכות הרבה בשבתות הרבה. And you did many works in many Shabbat. For example, let's take an example. Somebody has a pot on the fire on Shabbat, right? And he didn't realize that when you take the lid of the pot and stirs it on Shabbat, it's called cooking. He didn't know. And he did it for many, many times. Hundreds of times. שלא ידע שמלאכות אלו אסורות בשבת. He didn't know that these melachot is prohibited on Shabbat. So over here, he didn't know that cooking is not allowed. He also didn't know that, let's take an example, that eating apples, right? and throwing the apple away in the yard is not allowed. He didn't think it's not allowed. Well, I'm throwing an apple in the yard. He didn't know that this is what? Seeding. He didn't know, he didn't realize. So he did this one and this one. Right? So in other words, we have two Av Melachas over here. We have two fathers. Who are the two fathers? One of them is sowing, seeding in the ground, that's one. And one of them is cooking. Right? So there's two different types. So let's see. So chayav al kol av melacha u melacha. He's obligated on every time he did an av melacha, he needs to bring a sacrifice. Korban chatat. He needs to bring a sin offering. Shekol melacha sheishgaga b'fnei atzma, shelo yada she'hi asura b'Shabbat. Every work that it is mistake on its own, that he didn't know it is forbidden on Shabbat, ואפילו עשה אותה מלאכה כמה פעמים באותו Shabbat, even if he did the same thing, the same cooking, or he threw up 10 apples in the same Shabbat, or בכמה שבתות, or in many Shabbatot, אינו חייב עליה חטאת אחת. So he only needs to bring one sin offering, even if he did many on the same Shabbat, or many on many Shabbatot. Once he knew about it, I need to bring a sacrifice. But you bring it on what? On Av Melacha. Only on the father Melacha. For example, let's take an example. If you threw the apple, right? And then you watered the grass. So the question is watering is part of seeding. It's an offspring of seeding. So then we're going to count both watering and the apple as one. Because it's an offspring. That's why it's important to know which one is an offspring, which one is not. והוא הדין אם עשה כמה מיני תולדות שחייב על כל אחד ואחת. Also, if you did many offsprings, different ones, you need to do for each offspring, as long as they're different. אלא שאם עשה אב ותולדתו, but if a person did the father and his offspring, אין זה נחשב אלא כמלאכה אחת כמבואר מיד. Like it's only being considered one sin offering for both of them. העושה המלאכות הרבה מעין מלאכה אחת, one who does many jobs, many works, but he does it in one, כגון, for example, did the father and all the offsprings in one time. Like I said, the apple and the watering. In one time. He didn't know it was not allowed. או שעשה כמה תולדות מאב מלאכה אחת. Or he did a lot of offsprings. He went like this in the sand. Yeah? And he put the apple, is really seeding. But let's say, whatever, the offspring, he only did the offspring of the same מלאכה. כגון שנטע והבריך והרכיב. He gives an example. He planted something and he took a branch, put it in the ground. He's not really planting it, he's taking a branch, putting it in the ground, but it's tolda, it's an offspring of planting. והרכיב. Or he took a tree, he put the seed he made a hole, there was a hole in the tree, and he put the seed in the tree for it to make another tree on the tree. והרכיב, שכולם תולדות הזורע הם. All three of them are the offspring of seeding. So because they're from the same family, they all come from the family of seeding, אינו חייב אלא חטאת אחת. He's only obligated one sin offering. אבל אם עשה שתי תולדות משני אבות שונים, but if he did two offsprings from two fathers, כגון, example, שהשקע מים לזרעים, he watered the seeds. This is an offspring of זורע, an offspring of seeding. ותלש צמחים ביד, and then he took it and he uprooted them with his hand, all kinds of vegetables. He didn't know it was not allowed. This is תולדת קוצר. This is an offspring of sowing, something different, a different Av Melacha. So then you need to bring how many sacrifices? 2. Even though it's 10 Shabbatot, only 2. Right? הרי זה כאילו עשה שתי אבות מלאכה. It is like he did 2 fathers of מלאכות. וחייב על כל אחת ואחת. And he is obligated on each and every one.